I was going to college, as was Lane at the same time, and I was working fisheries at Guilford Packing. And in 1972 was an awful fish year. I was in a situation in the August time frame where I wasn't going to have money for me to go to school, nor Elaine. At that point in time, I got an offer to go to work from Ralph Wilson, who was the president at that time, to run the Pacific Water Company, which was a subsidiary at ap&t at that time. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I was the manager. The first thing to do was, to learn the system. Through that and learning the water treatment systems, it, became successful. However, in 1972, the Clean Water Act was passed. There was assistance available if you were a nonprofit. If you were a profit, there was no assistance available. At that point in time, we looked at our options and decided that we should sell that operation to a nonprofit that would have the funding to be able to meet those fairly stringent standards. And we did find purchasers, and they were sold. And then I was without a job. Everything was manual, paper ledgers, check registers, all handwritten, piles of paper. We had an old NCR machine that we did all our billing on. I was promoted up to treasurer and was more or less responsible for the finances, and that got me into the regulatory arena in Alaska with, at that time it was the APUC. And I also was involved in telephone settlement process back in that time, which was the average schedule method, which had us working with Alascom for the settlement process. And that really got me into the operation side of the business. It took a very resourceful person to keep the phones and telephones operating. We had all those primary locations, but there was only 13 employees, and that's including the headquarters. I got elected to the board of directors, served on the board of directors, and then in about 1983, Ralph was going to suspend his career with the company, and they made me acting president at that point, and then I became president and CEO in 1984. A lot has happened since 1984. We started the transition over to digital, which was kind of unusual for most telephone companies as they went from electrical mechanical to a crossbar, to a solid state, and then to a digital. We skipped all those evolutions and went right to digital. And of course now it's soft switches. In the early 90s, we were primarily a diesel operation on the energy side. We did have the Dewey Lakes hydro system. It's in the Hydro World Hall of Fame for operating continuously for over 100 years. The next expansion of the company was probably about in '62 when the tote system was built from the ground up. There was no electrical system in tote. Everybody self-generated. And that was done through an SBA loan. And then Craig was purchased from the city of Craig. Their electrical system was in trouble, and the same followed with Heidelberg. Then in about '84, we started moving away from the Fairbanks Morse slow-speed machines and going more with a medium-speed Caterpillar generators. And then about 91, 92, we started exploring hydro. And our first project was Black Bear Lake on Prince of Wales Island. lake, it still is the primary mover for that entire island. The drainage area on it is only 1.8 square miles. That is what we took out of the environment to provide renewable energy to that entire island and to those 9 communities, which is kind of minimal. As a result, we were able to get the Black Bear Lake project certified as low impact through the Low Impact Hydro Institute. The next hydro project was up in the Skagway-Haines area. After some stumbling around to find the right project, we settled on the Goat Lake project, which was another perched alpine lake, similar siphon intake, but it was dug down so we can draw that lake down 42 feet. Again, that is a high head, low impact project and has been certified low impact. And we also included in that a submarine cable that went down and connected Skagway to Haines. Both those projects are still in operation today. We wanted to lower the amount of diesel supplement down in Prince of Wales, and so we got a partial grant and loan from the state of Alaska to build South Fork, which is a run-of-the-river project that supplements Black Bear. Similarly, in 2005, 2004, we built a run-of-the-river up in Upperland Canal at Casadega Creek, and that supplements the Goat Lake. But as we added renewables, instead of that community exporting their dollars to an oil company, Standard Oil or whoever, those dollars stayed at home in the community. And that allowed the communities to grow. And we used to have a saying, community-minded, employee-owned, community-minded, building it together, because really the success of ap&t really depends on the communities that we serve and our employees. The thing I like the best is I was nominated by my coworker. And that's what I take the most pride in. It was a nice event and all that, but I think that's what I enjoyed the most out of it, is that I was appreciated by my colleagues in this company, and that's why. I enjoyed working with Bill very much. I consider him a friend as well as a colleague and boss. Losing him is really kind of hit me kind of hard. We did have a period where we had to reorganize our company under Chapter 11. And one of the requirements was that I had to go out and find 3 independent board members that would be willing to serve on our board. Bill was one of those that we recruited, and he came on in around 2001. He was a bright, cheering man and very intelligent, and working for him was quite a challenge. Under his leadership, the board put fairly high standards on myself and everybody else to perform, which is good. I'm sure the company will do fine, but we do need to take a moment of silence to remember Bill and everything that he did for us.
Well, speaking of personalities, there have been plenty of those along the way, but there are so few of them left. Still working with ap&t that go back 30, 40 years, and I want you just to touch on maybe a couple of those folks that are still with the company and maybe a recollection or two.
Ralph doesn't work for the company anymore, but he is a very large shareholder, and he was a character, and I worked for him for a number of years. He was a person that challenged you both mentally and technically, to grow. because at that time, you know, with 13 employees, we had to do everything. We had to be jack of trades. And he provided the leadership through that period of time of learning and surviving. David Flom in Ketchikan worked in those days for the company and left for a while, and now he's back. And Greg Mickelson, that started out as a laborer in Tok, when he moved his family up there in April and lived in a tent till he found a job. In April in Tok, it's not very warm. Another one I recall is John Moots. John has been with the company a very long time and has been a very loyal and capable employee, as well as a trustee of the ESOP for many years. And I always enjoyed working with John. And I do have a story. Well, one of the things that happens when you build transmission lines is that even though you try and make them Raptor-proof, eagles will get into the lines. And so every region, area, state generally has a recovery center that utilities and others that care about Raptors fund. And so we had an eagle taken down by a tree, I think it was by a transmission line out by the dump, and that eagle survived. And they called me up and they said, you get to name the eagle that's surviving. And I couldn't think of anything, it just hit me cold, and I said, Moots. Well, within a month they had released it back into the wild. Vern started in June or July, and I started in August. So he was employee number 12. I was 13. And Vern was an engineer, and he came out of Idaho, Idaho Falls area. And his degree was actually in nuclear energy. But if you recall the history during that time frame, you know, up to about the early 70s, it was going great guns. And then at that, the bottom kind of fell out of that industry for a while with huge overruns and that sort of thing. And probably for similar circumstances to me, Vern decided to take a job with ap&t. He's, you know, has always been a capable engineer and worked himself up to now he's our chief engineer. And he's got his fingerprints all over the company. And he's also been able to recruit some good engineers that hopefully will take us into the future. I certainly appreciate his effort, and thank you very much, because as CEO I get to take credit for all his work. You know, Stan's an interesting guy. My association with him goes way back. He worked for the railroad, and he worked for the oil distributor in Skagway for a while before he came to work for us. His father, Oscar Selmer, was in we have a rate review hearing in Skagway. And he was complaining about having a carrying charge on his bill because he had made his payment 2 days late, and it amounted to 10 cents. And I was just getting cooked. And I pulled a dime out of my pocket and walked up to him and gave it to him if he'd sit down. Of course he didn't. You know, Stan goes way back. His family goes way back into the history of Skagway. He's a remarkable individual. He has an IQ, and most of that IQ has probably been kind of directed into his musical talent. You know, he can play many instruments, and likes to have a band. I wonder why his band isn't playing at my retirement party, by the way, Stan. But he's a very interesting individual, And he served as the manager of Skagway for us for many, many years. He was also on the board of directors during difficult times. A very valuable person and a friend. I think this is a time where we're getting more technical and need to be more precise, and I think Mike brings that to the table. He's been here 27 years, so he has a lot of history on the company, and he's going to do very well. The shareholders should look forward to the value of their stock increasing and their dividends continuing under his leadership. I see no reason that he shouldn't be able to exceed and accomplish much more than I ever did, and maybe in a whole lot shorter time. Because I believe our employee ownership mindset drives performance above the norm. And I think that's been exhibited in the 44 years that I've been around. And the creation of the ESOP, which is an employee stock ownership program, is probably the biggest achievement, because that gave the incentive to the employees to build for themselves. I always thought that I wanted to invest in ap&t stock because I had more control over that than I would the Dow Jones or Standard & Poor's index. And so I never invested in anything except ap&t stock. So I was very non-diversified, and it worked out for me. But in this day and age, I think it's important that our employee owners recognize that they need to diversify their investments so that they don't take on unnecessary risk due to the lack of diversification. But I think the company's going to continue to grow and be successful. I have no idea at this point. I know I'll be doing more fishing, spending more time outside on my boat, and spending time with my currently 6 granddaughters, and my lovely wife Elaine, and my 2 sons and my daughter. Being the CEO since 1984 is kind of a lonely job. I'm not going to miss the stress, I'm not going to miss the traveling, but I am going to miss the people, because that's, really what makes ap&t different than a lot of the companies. And I'm going to miss the camaraderie that we all have as mutual shareholders. That will be missed over time.